in my life, growth hasn't happened without risk and without effort.
Welcome to the Crucible Project Podcast. The Crucible Project is a nonprofit organization committed to creating a world of men and women who live with integrity, grace, and courage, helping them to fulfill their God-given purpose. This podcast will discuss important and sometimes difficult topics while delivering practical life applications with men and women who are currently practicing this work. We are igniting Christ-like change in men and women through experiences of radical honesty and grace.
Hello and welcome to the Crucible Project Podcast. My name is Andy Spell and I will be your host this afternoon. And I'm really excited to have a man from Crucible who's going to be part of this interview today. His name is Mark Dunning. So welcome, Mark.
Hey, thanks, Andy. It's great to be here. Big fan of Crucible and the impact of it in my life. And this podcast series has been great too. So thanks.
Hey, Mark, how long have we known each other? And we only knew each other through an online group that we were on, but how was that 2018?
Yeah, I didn't know there was a pop quiz portion to this.
Yeah.
I would say, that was pre-COVID, wasn't it? So yeah, 2018-ish, something like that. It was after I had completed my 2-year group through Crucible and was looking to keep doing my work. So connecting with you and other men throughout the country. It was a virtual based group and it was really good for me. So yeah.
Awesome, man. I'm glad that we get to share in this and we get to talk today. So Mark, if you would you please just tell a little bit about yourself, where you live, about your family, what you do, just some insights for those that are listening today.
Yeah, sure. So I live up here in Green Bay, Wisconsin, where it snows, 11 months out of the year. It's a pretty great town. Live here with my wife, Joy. We have 3 kids, a daughter who's 11, a son who's 8, and a daughter who's 2. A blessed life, man, for real. There's just a lot to be grateful for. I have a previous career of serving in youth ministry capacities. Did that for about 13 years. And then when we moved up here, I was looking for a change of pace, found myself in sales and work for a marketing firm. And I've kind of been engaged with Crucible since 2012. I had done my initial weekend.
Wow. And where did you do your initial weekend?
Beautiful Wisconsin.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Mark, you've done a lot of work since 2012. So if you could think back, what was it going on in your life, or when you went to Crucible, what kind of spurred you on to wanting to do the weekend?
I'm trying to think. I would have been like 25-ish, something like that. I was fairly early married, and I kept running into this fight, this dynamic with my wife, who's just a rock star. She's awesome. But at the time really feeling like, gosh, you're not respecting me, and I couldn't even really define what the heck I meant by that. Right. What I know is that I didn't feel valued, and I thought it was her job to make me feel valued. Right. That was going to fix this thing in my life. Right. Getting married. And I'm really grateful for a buddy, Robert Locklear. He's another Crucible dude. And he was our worship pastor. And we're grabbing coffee and kind of unpacking this one day. And he's just like, man, it has nothing to do with joy. You don't think you're worthy. You're not feeling worthy because you don't think that you are worthy. There's work for you to do on yourself that's really going to make an impact on this. And so he invited me to participate on a upcoming weekend. And I want to say it was like a month or so later that it came up, and there I was. And so, yeah, really struggling with a lot of self-esteem, self-worth, feeling worthless. And like I was just always going to get caught, always going to get found out for not being enough. And it was exhausting and it was discouraging. I felt like everything was pointing towards that being true. Like I was wrongfully applying, like I don't think this was the exact situation, but like I'd get a red light and it's like, oh, of course, because I'm a hunk of junk or something, that I would get a red light. And it's like, no, it's just a red light, man. Like but I would go through life always almost seeking to self fulfill this validation of, yeah, no, really, I am worthless, and here's more proof of it.
Wow. And going to your wife to get that fulfillment, what did that do to her? And what message did you take when she couldn't do it?
Yeah, yeah, fair. She's incredibly strong, and so I've always been grateful for that. And yet, I was going to her to solve a problem she couldn't solve, and so I could tell there was angst in her of hearing, a husband who's saying, I'm not getting what I need out of you. I need something different more here. And her trying and saying different things or approaching things different ways. Like she tried all kinds of things to force a square peg in a round hole kind of thing. And it still wasn't working, right? Because it's my junk, my work that I had to address. But I just super grateful she did what she could with it. And then, really it was fun to see how much this work landed for her as I stepped into it, to realize like, oh yeah, this is going to be a long-term solution for us, to be healthy individuals and a healthy couple.
When you're talking, it reminds me a lot of my story. And I needed that validation from my wife early on in our marriage. And I remember, I've probably said this on this podcast, but as somebody maybe hasn't listened before, I just remember one time I can see the room where we were sitting and her looking at me, and she goes, I can't be everything you need. I just can't do it. We're married. We've got kids. And you need me to just build you up all the time, and it's exhausting. You got to figure this out. I didn't have Crucible at the time, but I remember it was exhausting for her to try to be everything and try to be everything she needed to be for herself.
Yeah.
And so doing this work has helped me realize, okay, I don't need a validation from her. I need to know that God is who validates me, who's made me who I am.
Yes, 100%.
So going on the weekend, what did you want?
Yeah, going on the weekend, I wanted, I wanted to shake these demons, these tapes, these voices that were playing in my head all the time. That just I'm garbage and not enough. I wanted to look at where these were coming from, and I wanted to do something about them, to them, through them, so that I could have a different outcome on the other side.
Yeah, that's good. And people that knew you, would they have known that? I mean, just like the people you're working with at church, or did your persona let those messages be known, or were you pretty good at trying to cover those up and hide them? Would people have thought, oh yeah, this is how he feels about this?
Yeah, I think I tried to keep that pretty well hidden. I think the ways that it would have showed up, it's the ways that when those messages, when I allow them to have power again still, the way they show up is when I'm in a bad headspace and I'm trying to manipulate my circumstances or the people around me to get the validation to fill that void, it comes off as desperate and manipulative. And so, yeah, I think at times I probably accidentally showed that, before my weekend and stepping into the work, really engaging with it. But gosh, I was trying my hardest to keep all my garbage hidden, all my faults, all my anything that was imperfect. I felt like I couldn't show my world and show up that way with.
So you showed up on the weekend and you wanted to deal with that insecurity and some of those messages that were running around underneath the surface, but were bubbling up inside of you. And you knew they were coming out sideways. So that's what you wanted. How did God show up around those things?
Gosh, the weekend was powerful, and it was amazing to me to see God's presence throughout it in ways that I was not familiar with, right? I was a church kid, youth group junkie, Bible college pastor guy, right? I went to umpteen different, weekends and retreats and conferences, and this was different, uncomfortable at times, because it allowed me to remove the mask and the methods I had been so comfortable with of trying to pretend like I was confident and had it all together and didn't have these tapes, playing in my head. In that vulnerable place, I experienced God. I felt Him journeying alongside that with me, and it felt scary, and it felt sad, and it felt dark for a lot of it. And I had the chance to wrestle with God and dig down into some ways that this pattern was showing up in my life in multiple facets, and ways that it might have started coming online for me earlier, and ways that I could maybe make a change, right?
Mm.
Feeling like my toolbox was getting filled with resources. And yeah, I didn't walk away from the weekend fixed. I didn't, like I even mentioned before, this is still something that I notice is kind of always tapping at my shoulder, inviting me in. And there's times where, I still find myself visiting it. But it's more of a visit, and then recognizing, oh, this isn't accurate. This isn't who God made me to be. And I can pivot, as opposed to just sulking and soaking in it, uh, which was kind of my MO before.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you had a message before you went, and maybe even as you began the weekend, that you weren't good enough, you didn't have enough, that all those messages were running through. Did
Yeah.
you leave that weekend with a new message as you remember? Did you have a new message for you?
Yeah, I think that the biggest message I came away with was this realization at a very personal level that God intimately knows me and loves me. That I've had wasted so much time trying to hide from others, the wrinkles, the faults, and pretending maybe I was doing that with God too, right? By maybe praying certain ways or reading my Bible enough or whatever kind of tasks. And it was on the weekend realizing, nope, God sees me warts and all, and yet I'm deeply loved by Him and
Mm,
accepted by Him. It was powerful.
that's awesome. Man, same thing for me. How has your life been different since your weekend? And maybe you've alluded to this. How have you had to keep doing the work?
Yeah. So on the weekends, I really started a journey of appreciating full transparency, authentic, vulnerable friendships. Church took on new meaning to me. And while I found sermons and worship music and all to still be beneficial and edifying, for me, it was most about putting myself around people who I could be real with, and they'd accept me for my faults, and also invite me into deeper trust of God.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had plenty of friends in the past where accepting in faults and are just permissive, and it's just like, oh yeah, that sucks. I guess I do that too, and la di da, here we go,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
that doesn't actually help me grow. And I've had
Right.
plenty of relationships that are only focused on the grow, right? You sucked doing that. You got to do better next time. You got to do better. You got to do better. Well, that shame performance based stuff doesn't actually motivate me for lifelong change. It's that balance of the two, of actually receiving me in my brokenness and lovingly inviting me into more with God.
Yeah.
That's been transformative in my life and in my faith since then. And so putting myself around those people, those guys, and it's been multiple guys throughout the years, that can keep doing that, has definitely been a big part of my life since then.
Yeah. And what I love about the work that we do, Mark, for me, the change really comes in a lot of the work that we do and the processes and the group meetings. What's made a difference is I get to do discovery through the Spirit, through God, through the men, I get to do discovery of what needs to change. And it's not just somebody telling me what I've got to do.
Yeah.
I get to discover it through the questions, through the groups, through the conversations. I become aware, this is the step I need to take. And it seems like it's actually easier or more convicting when the Spirit has given that to me than when somebody just speaks it into me.
Yes. Yeah, totally resonate with that. And I'd even take it, the next step for me that's landed is stepping into, I want to change this, right?
Yeah.
Not being told by somebody else that here's the rule list or the action list and make sure you do these things, but feeling like through this work, God's Spirit reveals an option of growth.
Mm.
And then for me to say, I that's going to be uncomfortable, or that's going to demand change in my life or effort or whatever. And then making the willful choice to say, I choose this. I want this in my life. And so then stepping into it.
Man, that's good. Good stuff. So I want to pivot now. So you've been doing this work 12 years. And one of the things that I know that you're passionate about is authentic male communities and relationships. Why do you believe, Mark, that it is so important for you and for other men to have those kind of relationships?
I've just noticed through Crucible the difference in relationships that I have, of friendships that I have with men who are engaged in their work. And there's other resources beyond Crucible too. I don't mean to only wave that flag, but regardless of how they're doing their work, that they're stepping into the hard stuff and trying to grow and surrounding themselves in community versus most everybody else that I encounter. There's a shallowness I've experienced and I've perpetuated, whether it's a church or business professional settings or whatever, that leaves me feeling empty and plastic, fake connected to other people. It's exhausting.
Yeah.
And I think the world that I'm in sometimes demands those kind of transactional, surface level conversations and relationships. And I don't think I can change that, but what I can change is my diet of the other relationships I have. And it's through those meaty, full sharing, emotionally connected, spurring one another on in life, conversations and relationships that I feel life, and that I'm spurred on to grow and show up as the man that I want to be. Because I'm not going to show up as the man I want to be if I'm just by myself. I've been there, done that. It doesn't happen for me. I need that community to get where I want to go.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things that came to mind in here. So I'm going to try to remember both questions. So when you do life alone and isolation, my guess is, because I've done it, there's been moments of isolation since my weekend, and I can do that pretty quickly.
Oh, absolutely.
Where does isolation land you?
In isolation, those messages of feeling worthless are a lot more appetizing.
Yeah. And why is that appetizing?
I don't know. That's a good question. I know I do well with accountability, with predictable intervals of accountability.
Yeah.
I know myself well enough now that I know that I lack a tremendous amount of self-discipline unless I put myself in the regular rhythms where I'm going to get supported the way I want. And so really, I think it comes down to knowing myself and what I need to be able to show up the way that I want.
Yeah. The way the enemy works on me, Mark, is when I isolate, I tell myself, man, these men, even if they love me, these men, they're going to probably grow tired of me talking about this, or they don't want to hear from me right now. The enemy plays this game that, man, you're going to be too much right now. They've got too much going on. So just hold it all inside, just deal with it. And that's what messes with me at times.
Yeah, I absolutely resonate with that. Because then, yeah, when when I'm isolated for a while and then I step back into it, that's a willful choice to re-engage. That's the speed bump that I recognize as I do it, where this message of I'm too much, or I'm the screw up and they're perfect, they have it together, I don't belong here. That's those really come online, and I feel like those are messages from the enemy. And if I listen to them, it would drive me back into my hole and keep me in isolation and keep me out of community.
Right. Yeah, me too. 100%. So I wanted to ask about isolation. And then we talked about authenticity and how it helps you grow. When you're in those groups and you find other men being authentic, and they are at their core, you're sitting in there and you're thinking, there's no way they would share that unless they felt safe. What does that do for you and your spirit?
Hmm. Yeah, it just lights me up in this tender way for them. I feel often very excited for them because it's in that sharing that I've found such freedom and transformative growth. And I just feel so connected and tender to them, I'm ready to take up arms. What do you need? We're moving the couch, or what are we doing? Like, let's get after it. I'm in your corner. I'm on your team, and usually it's not a logistical help me move this couch kind of a thing, but it does show up in a gosh, I'm going to need to keep talking through this as I continue to experience this dynamic in my life that I'm trying to work through. It's going to keep hounding me, and the only way out is by talking through it. And so by holding that space with other men, that feels very missional to who I am, how God created me, and in those spaces, it helps me feel more permission to show up with my brokenness. Brokenness invites brokenness in those circles, and it also lights up that pastoral care that I feel like God baked into me as well.
Yeah. And there's some people I believe that will be listening to this podcast, men and women, and they're saying, "Yeah, but you don't understand, Mark. You don't understand, Andy. Here's what I want to share. And if I'm this authentic, something bad might happen, or I might get judged." But what I'm hearing from you is that it actually makes you take a step towards that person, towards that man and authenticity instead of a step back.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, what do we have to do to fight through this message that says, "Yeah, but I'm the one that's got the one thing that's going to ruin it all."
Right. I think that's a totally normal thought. I mean, I've had that a million times. What's been helpful to me is the perspective of what do I get for myself by continuing to hold my cards close to my chest, by not stepping into vulnerable community. In my life, that's been its own bad thing. And in fact, the bad thing of isolation and believing that my issues and my dynamic is just insurmountable and ginormous, and I can't bring that. That's a lie I choose to believe more and more. It seems like the rock gets bigger and bigger in my head when I'm in that space versus getting it out there. And there have been times where I have shared, thankfully it's not been in Crucible circles, but in other circles around friends and churches, where I share my brokenness and I am judged, and
Right.
I don't get received the way that I would have hoped for. And I'm alive. Like, that doesn't actually change my worth. It hurt, right? It was uncomfortable, but it also helped me land in healthier boundaries with some of those people. And recognize, I can't, don't want to share all things with all the people all the time. They might not be the safest people to choose to be vulnerable with, but who are my people? Where are they at? How do I
Right
find?
on.
It's almost been this fuel to say, okay, well, maybe not you, or not you right now. That's fine, but who are my people, and how do I get more in front of them? Because it has been so encouraging and motivating when I find my tribe, when I get around the right people that receive me and spur me on.
Yeah. The one thing I love about this, Mark, is, we were together probably, I think, a year and a half in a group. And then we've talked maybe 3 or 4 times since then. But I still have a tender affection for you, for the work that we did in our group. And our group went deep, and our group held each other's stuff, and we
Yeah.
listened and we encouraged and we did work. And I was a better man for the group that we were in because I was dealing with some heavy stuff, and I found safety with you men to do that work, and it changed me, and it saved me, and it propelled me to make some of the decisions I needed to make and to be the man I needed to be. And I want people out there
Yeah.
to know that this really does work.
Yeah, Andy, I mean, same. That group and really others as well. I've been blessed with multiple groups now, through Crucible, and even creating groups in a similar mindset that have been able to supply that unique relationship for me. And I see so much growth in the last, 10, 15 years through that. God has used authentic community to help me become more the version of myself that he had in mind.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. So, man, Mark, anything else that you would want to say to the listeners today, just an encouragement that you would have for them around this authentic relationships, places in their lives?
I highly recommend taking a risk. In my life, growth hasn't happened without risk and without effort. And I've been a master at coming up with excuses and making them sound really good, convincing myself as well as others of why, getting uncomfortable or putting in the effort of things isn't the right choice for me. But when I'm willing to go there, that's where God has met me over and over. And for me, it's been in this space of vulnerable community, authentic community. So yeah, if folks aren't experiencing that yet, I've found Crucible to be a wonderful resource to jumpstart that. They have a bunch of groups that are available for folks who, are just getting started. There's a fantastic initial weekend experience that we were talking about. There's group options for folks after that weekend as well. Yeah, I encourage you to jump in.
Man, I do too. Thank you, Mark. It's been a pleasure getting to talk with you today. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for what you mean in my life. And folks, like you said, we've got initial weekends for men and women all over the country. The crucibleproject.org. You can go in there and find one. I found this place to be a great place to do work. You may say, Crucible is not for me. I want to do something else. If you're listening to this, find somewhere to do the soul work you need to do, because you will not be disappointed. God bless you guys. Thank you for listening. And please tune in again next week for another Crucible Project podcast.
For more information about our weekends, please go to thecrucibleproject.org. Or if you're ready to get started on your transformational journey right now, you can connect with one of our Crucible certified coaches for a free 30-minute session at thecrucibleproject.org/coaching. That's thecrucibleproject.org/coaching. If you like what you heard, connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Rate and review wherever you are listening, and don't forget to subscribe on your preferred podcast platform. Thank you for listening.